All right, what is up, Mortgage Coach community? I am super pumped to talk to someone that I've only interviewed a couple times on our channel, but I've had a lot of conversations offline with him. Every time I talk to this man, Justin Tucker, I am inspired. I think of things in different ways. He is pretty active on social media. I can't remember if the post was on LinkedIn or it was Facebook, but he said something to the effect that the only two things that will matter going forward are personal brand and AI. And I'm like, well, one thing I believe for sure, those two things will matter. I'm not so sure I agree they're the only two things that will matter. But what's up, my brother?
What's going on, Dave? Thanks for having me. You're kind of my industry Sherpa. I can always count on a text from you when something big happens. And hey, what are your thoughts on this? Anytime I get a chance to rap with you, I'm all in.
Yeah, well, back at you, man. Hopefully, one of these days it will be in Portland at a killer pizza place. For anybody who doesn't know, this man is a pizza aficionado. You've actually created a cool club. I've got a coin somewhere around here.
I'm actually spinning mine in my hand right now.
Yeah, what is the club you've created?
It's Pizza Illuminati. It's just a creative outlet to not only enjoy pizza and bring attention to really cool indie pizza places, but it's also fun to test the marketing chops outside of real estate. Really get to where you can really let your creativity run wild.
Yeah, well, he also happens to be, in my opinion, one of the top change agents in housing. He was called out and recognized by Housing Wire as a trendsetter. What is your title at WFG now?
Recently changed to chief strategy officer. So
Chief Strategy Officer.
yeah, I do feel like I'm getting old though, because it was, I think 2017, it was Rising Star, and now it's Housing Wire Trendsetter. And that just means you got old. We can't,
Yeah, you're getting old.
you don't
Yeah.
qualify for the young awards anymore.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, the Vanguard War, I got that at like I don't know what I was in my late 50s. You'll probably get it before I did. But by the way, guys, there's an awesome event coming up called The Gathering. I will actually be speaking at that event. We'll put a link down below. It will be the most powerful room in housing. I love it because both mortgage and real estate executives are coming together under one roof. And anyways, just link down below. Make sure you are at the gathering. So by the way, you were also the chief marketing officer. So you've got marketing chops, you've got strategy chops, and also you're an operator, you're an executor. You're a guy who takes ideas and puts them into action. Why, what was going through your mind when you wrote that post? And why do you believe, if not the only two things, these are pivotal things going forward?
Yeah, I think my world today is kind of like that Venn diagram where customer experience, marketing, sales, technology, operations, where all those things overlap. I think oftentimes those things are really siloed, but they can also get really complex and confusing. And I never want to take credit for a comment that wasn't directly mine. There's a gentleman out there named Buck Wise. If you're not following Buck, I would highly recommend it. He is one of the leaders as it pertains to creating your own individual brand. And he thinks about it in this really cool, authentic way. We had him do a training for some of our top salespeople because I have a belief that corporate marketing is dying. I really do think you're going to start to see more of this bottom up, influencer driven, tell the story through your people. And so we're trying to invest into a lot of that. And we were on a call and he said that and it hit me over the head like a ton of bricks, which of course it's not just those two things, but two pillars of the future are, have you developed a personal brand? And that's going to be even more and more critical as we see, some of the acquisitions happen in our space. And then are you leveraging AI because it simultaneously, levels the playing field and widens the gap at the exact same time. And I'm just caught up with the fact that people are using AI too much like a magic trick right now. Oh, it wrote my property description. Isn't that cool? Or it turned me into an action figure. Isn't that cool? And I feel like they're missing the true power of what AI could do alongside of a personal brand. So shout out to Buck Weiss. I mean, that thought hasn't left my head since I heard it from him.
Yeah, and by the way, is that Wise, Wise?
It is. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Cool. Well, let's start with that because big news in housing. We're now in May. We're weeks away from halftime of 2025, and Rocket has made some really big moves. And actually in the press release when they acquired Mr. Cooper, The quote from the CEO of Rocket is, with the right data and AI infrastructure, we will deliver the right products at the right time. That's how we build lifelong relationships by proactively unlocking benefits and meeting the needs of the consumers before they rise. And I think I've heard the quote, click to final payment housing platform. I've heard the click, tip to tail housing platform. How big of a deal is the Rocket, growth, acquisition, and what they're doing for both housing and for mortgage and real estate?
I would say it's massively a huge deal and at the same time not a big deal at all, if that makes sense. Because I think it's kind of that digital experience with a personal touch. It's that ability to try and scale personalization, and they're trying to do that. I don't, tip to tail or front to back. I like to think of things as more cyclical, like a figure eight or something that keeps bringing people back around. And with that, I think that the people who are still going to have a lot of control and say and power in this industry are people who have those personal brands, have those relationships, and really become the true guide or Sherpa, if you will, through the process. Now, I think those people need to start embracing some of the same type of tools that a Rocket will try to embrace. I think they need to start thinking about their tech stack and how it empowers those personal one-to-one conversations. But still to this day, you can go to a lending tree, you can go to a Credit Karma, and you can rate shop and you can do all of those things. And then you still might pick up the phone and actually call the person that you know. So while I do think that it's interesting that they're now trying to extend the cycle and create home search with Redfin and servicing on the back end and really try to own that, get a customer in through whatever point, and then own that customer for the LTV, the lifetime value of that customer. I still think people are going to rely on really, really important relationships with people that they know, like, and trust.
Yeah, no, well, I agree with that. Let's before we kind of start drilling down on that and get to the importance of personal brand and maybe even get tactical at some point. So that's from a mortgage perspective and real estate, but let's just say mortgage centric, that's the big mover. And then Rocket, or excuse me, not Rocket, but Zillow, who's got over 200 million unique visitors, they are one of the top 10 fastest growing mortgage companies. And I think it's just a matter of time. The question is it weeks, months, or
Yeah.
years, a few years, that they're one of the top 10 mortgage companies in the country. And so realtors make note and mortgage take note.
And
You
title companies.
and title companies,
Yep.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
so so it sounds like you are like me. If you are local, like they are a threat, but your biggest threat are the other local loan officers and the other local realtors that are quickly adopting the technologies that, and they're adopting, keyword, they're adopting, they're using, and they're delivering that same level of experience. And in every city, there are people that are quickly adopting and executing really well, and they're just gaining market share. Like the vital few is gaining more in market share and leaving everybody else behind.
Absolutely. And I wanted to reiterate, it's the real use of AI, not the flashy use of AI. I mean, I know with what you guys do like at Trust Engine, I mean, it's really deep, rich data that gives people signals that they can use to interact with people at the right time. Those are the types of things that people need to set up and not just, oh, I use ChatGPT to write a social media campaign. I mean, I think that there's another level or some more depth there. But I think what it all comes back to, Dave, is convenience. And I'll use this example in my own world. I don't know about you, but I doom scroll through Instagram. I'm just flipping through, looking at content, going down rabbit holes, trying to consume and learn. And inevitably, they will pitch me a product that I'm interested in. It could be some new healthy chips. It could be a new razor. It could be something that is a vitamin or whatever it is. But the first thing that I do, the absolute first thing that I do, is I go see if it's on Amazon so I can one click buy it. I don't click on the ad and go to that website and then see, oh, I got to put all my information in and go through this whole process to get it because that's clunky. I just go to Amazon. If it's there, I buy it. If it's not, I don't buy it. I'm like, oh, it's not on Amazon. I don't want to go through that process. Now, I know those are really small items, but I do think that the world around us is getting trained to want to have that level of convenience. And if your process is clunky and it's complicated and it's convoluted and it's difficult for someone to understand or get through, and someone else somewhere else they can just press a button, yeah, I mean, that is a little scary.
So let's focus on that for just a second because that came up when I interviewed Bruce Gerke, who is running lending intelligence for JD Power. He's also going to be speaking at the gathering. He is actually on my panel.
Awesome.
That is right after the CEO of Rocket, the CEO of Mr. Cooper, and the CEO of Redfin are the session right before mine. And he actually commented on the fact that so many people in mortgage and housing, and let's just focus on mortgage,
Yeah.
they're comparing their tech to other mortgage tech.
Yeah.
And we as an industry need to like, no, you're even though Amazon's not in housing, you're competing with the Amazon experience, you're competing with the Uber experience, you're competing with name your favorite app,
Yep.
Zillow experience. You're not competing with the tech experience of your peers.
Amen. Amen. Will you indulge me for a quick story?
Yeah, please. That's why I'm
So
interviewing you, bro.
when we opened WFG 15 years ago, I had a really good friend close a transaction with us. He was a college roommate, and I picked up the phone and called him instantly after the closing. And I was like, "Hey," his name was Matt. I was like, "Matt, how'd it go? Like, how'd we do?" And his response was like, you guys were okay. It was all right." And I got super defensive. I was like, "Well, wait, you don't understand. We're great at this. We're awesome." And as soon as I kind of calmed down, I said, "Hey, can we go grab a beer and I just want to ask you some questions." And he taught me something that I wish I would have learned way earlier on in my career. And that is while I was comparing us to other title companies, he was comparing us to every other experience that he has in the world. And we ended up developing a platform called My Home based off of this conversation because he literally said, my college roommates used to call me Tuck. So that he was like, Tuck, if I can follow along with a package and a pizza and a cab, why can't I follow along with my home? And it's true. Like if I can do it on something so meaningless as a pizza from Domino's, why wouldn't I want that same type of transparency as I'm following along with the biggest purchase of my life? Well, now we can extend that from transparency to ease. How easy is it to get qualified for a loan and get all of your documents uploaded and over? And I'm just going to share a recent experience because I do feel like every person should have to go through the home buying and selling process in this industry. It'd been 8 years for me. I just went through a process where I had to get pre-approved for a new construction home. It's not going to be ready for a year, but that person did not give me advice to make sure I wasn't on the do not call list. Dave, this is not a joke. I have 600 phone calls in 3 weeks from people who are got that information that my credit was pulled and are now trying to get me to send them a loan. It makes me feel really awful about the industry and what we're up against. But had someone given me that advice and been there to shepherd me through that process and said, hey, just before we pull this, you're going to want to do this and this, that would have meant the world to me because my phone wouldn't be blowing up, 16 times an hour with people trying to convince me to use them for a loan.
Yeah, that's another guy every time you and I do this, we could just unpack that. I mean, remember what Rocket said, like it's about predicting, it's about getting to the needs before. And while us at Trust Engine, we are one of the providers of those alerts, and we're not entirely proud of that alert. We advocate for legislation around that type of an alert,
Yeah.
and where the future is going, and it is just a question of time until legislatively there is limits to who should be able to get that alert. And if you're a local loan officer, tell me if you agree with this. Two things I believe, like the most important things you can do is you have to win your database and
Yep.
you have to win locally. Like,
Amen.
and
Amen.
and a lot of winning locally and optimizing locally is optimizing your database. And vice versa. Like those are the two things that you need to do if you want to thrive going forward.
I couldn't agree more, and I want to be careful with the way that I say this, but it's simple but not easy. It's not a complicated thing to do, but it's also not easy. And what I find is, and I don't mean to be kind of contrarian here, but what I find is you, me, a lot of other people in this industry who pay attention to this have been singing the same song for a while. It's just a matter of actually sitting down and doing it. It's sitting down and getting your database in order and having a process for how you add to it as you meet new people. It's making sure that you do the things that a Rocket Mortgage can't do, like the signals of important life events that aren't just going to be a generic happy birthday card with a logo on it. They're going to be a real phone call, and you're going to actually have a real human interaction. So I think I've quoted this book before or referenced this book before for you, but there's an amazing book called The Feeling Economy. And it is essentially how the era of AI is going to lead to the era of empathy. And through that, when things become more scarce, we place more value on it. So I don't want an automated email, and I don't want a birthday card with a logo on it. I want Dave to send me a text message with a slice of pizza and a fist bump. That's what I would rather have from you, to know that I feel seen and that I'm a real human being. And you do that type of stuff all the time.
Yeah. Well, let's go a little tactical. And so while my biggest audience is mortgage professionals, my biggest audience is mortgage professionals that rely on realtors as their the two primary referral sources are their database and real estate agents. So knowing that we're talking to that group, let's start unpacking personal brand and what that means to modernize, to have, let's just call it level five. There's a new community called the Modern Mortgage IQ community. It's something that also donates money to First Home IQ, which is a nonprofit that you and I, well, I helped co-found it, and you're an active ambassador and
It's
refer
an
for that.
awesome, awesome thing. It's tremendous.
Yeah, but there's 8 pillars to the modern mortgage advisor. Pillar number one is mindset. Like you've the people who are level five modern, they have a mindset that's just different than, call it, traditional old school LOs. There's leadership, there's technology, there's advice, there's modern selling. Like selling isn't what it
Yeah.
used to be. Like before I go meet someone, I learned from our mutual friend Eric Post, you know, and I before this podcast in AI in Whoosy, thank you, Eric. I put in describe Justin Tucker and I put his company name, so it got the right Justin Tucker, and then I
Yeah,
put
hopefully it's not Justin Tucker from the Baltimore Ravens right now. He's
no,
got
I
some,
put I
yeah,
put I
so
put
I want
art.
to I want to stay away from that one.
Yeah, yeah, no, you make sure you put the company name of who that works with, so it's like telling you the right one. And I did a few other prompts, but people, modern selling is doing your prep beforehand. Then there's modern marketing, and there's personal branding, probably personal branding before marketing, and then there's money. The modern mortgage professional makes money, saves money, invests money, and hopefully you're investing in real estate, because that's probably one of the few things that can really be AI proof is the investment in real estate. So with kind of those pillars laid out, personal branding, how do you design it, and what are some of the ways that you're seeing the most, call it, rocket proof lenders and Zillow proof realtors leverage a personal brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is an old phrase, but it's one that just is near and dear to me, which is, why do we market and sell to people in ways we don't like to be marketed and sold to? And so right up front, you just need to put your antennas up and know what things work for you and what things don't. If you're the type of person like me, where the first thing that I do is I walk in the morning and delete all of my spam, then why would I think that me spamming a bunch of people is also going to work if it doesn't work on me? So then you start to get into like the tactical side of personal brand. And sometimes I like to remove the word brand and say identity, because brand can have this feeling as a company, and identity, is an individual and or a group. And so there's a couple things you can do. I love the art of brand archetyping. There's a great book out there called The Hero and the Outlaw. There's essentially 12 brand archetypes that people fall into: the hero, the lover, the jester, the explorer, the creator, the innocent, and the sage. And those really help you kind of create a personality, and that personality in storytelling usually has an affinity to a certain type of an audience. But to go even a little bit more deep than that, to do it directly for you, I like to think about it in 4 quadrants. So let's take the upper left-hand quadrant. These are things that you know about yourself and things other people know about you. That's called alignment. That's where you're saying, okay, I like pizza and I know that, and Dave knows I like pizza. And so we have alignment in that quadrant. You move to the right of that and you have things that you know about yourself, but other people don't know. That's where you need to signal. You need to signal those things out to the world so that they do know those things about you. That moves you back into the alignment bucket. If you go below that quadrant, those would be things that other people know about you, but you don't know about yourself. And that's where you should strive for feedback. Who are the people that you can talk to? They're going to give you true insight and show you things about yourself that maybe you don't know. And then how can, again, you signal those things and end up in the alignment bucket. The last bucket is things you don't know about yourself and others don't know about you either. And those are things you never know until you're in the situation. Like if a house is on fire, would you run in and save a dog? You could think you would, but until you're in that situation, would you? So from that standpoint, I actually would tell people sit down with a piece of paper, write all the things, personal and business, that form your identity. For me, it's pizza, it's watches, it's my dog, it's Oregon State football. It's also contrarian and it's marketing nut and it's all these other things. And then I ask myself all the time, am I signaling this stuff in an authentic way out to my sphere of influence so that they think of me when those things come up? And I would venture to guess that when you see pizza, you think of me. Well, there's no reason you can't connect the same thing to when you think real estate or when you think mortgage or when you think financial literacy or advice that you can't think of your mortgage broker or your real estate contact. So I just think people need to be really intentional, which is first of all figuring out what their identity is and then forming a strategy around how they're going to convey that so people actually attach them to those things.
So first of all, amen to that. Like if we were going back and forth on social media, there'd be like a 100% or like the bullseye,
This,
or the
this,
fist bump.
this.
Oh, I probably would do all three. I'd do a target, a bullseye, and a fist bump.
There's
Uh,
your identity right there. Everyone
yeah,
knows.
yeah, no doubt. Um, so let's. This is a really a good transition to first home IQ, which is something I definitely wanted to talk to you about because you want to win locally. And so how do you win locally? And you see a lot of people in both housing, mortgage, and real estate, you know, involved at sporting events, sponsoring local things. And I'm not here to say one is better than the other. I think you
Sure,
got to go where your heart is at. But
sure.
I do want to just to the audience, and I want to hear your opinions on this is the thing that I think makes First Home IQ so special is that, first of all, we have a financial literacy crisis in America.
We do.
We, when you look at renters and you look at the data, the average net worth of someone who rents is $10,000 in net worth. The average net worth of someone who owns is 420 plus
Wow.
$1,000, and the age has gone from like literally 4 decades. The average age of a first-time home buyer, in the 70s, it was 29 to 31. In the 80s, 29 to 31. The 90s, 31 to 32. You know, even the 2000s, it was, in the low. And then here we are in 2025, and it has skyrocketed 33, 36, 38. And
Wow.
so it's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a big problem in America. And then I also think as mortgage and real estate professionals, if we take it upon ourselves to be these first responders to this crisis, one, we can make a real difference. Like we run enough credit reports, we talk to enough people who want to own homes, everybody in our database, like whether they want to own a home because they're a renter or whether they own a home and they have kids and they want them, or let's say they're in your database and the parents don't own, but they want their kids to own homes. So like everybody wants this for their kids. So to me, it's a big problem and it's a big opportunity to do more loans and sell more homes. What are your thoughts?
Completely agree. I think what you guys are doing is very noble and timely in this crisis we have around financial literacy. And to that, I think that it's also how you would want to be seen as an expert. So you could sit back on your own and figure out how can I create all of this content to help people become educated on what it's like to save for a home and what it's like to go through the closing of a home and all of those different things. or you could just use content that's already really good and provided for you, and then be able to leverage that out to the audience and show you as the person who's kind of that knowledge broker that's helping people grow and learn. I just think that like I didn't get any of that education when I was in school. And most people learn from them. That just depends on where their parents are at in that and actually going to teach. But if you now, as a real estate agent or as a lender, are working with your sphere to do those things, I think it's phenomenal. Still, Dave? Did I lose
Yeah,
you?
but yeah, by the way, to mode. So so there's no doubt this is an opportunity. What would be some thoughts? Because this is something where you're referring First Home IQ all the time. But if there was a loan officer or a realtor listening to this, and chief marketing officer, chief strategy officer, what would be just a checklist? What would be some things that you would recommend to them? Because a lot of people that watch this are First Home IQ ambassadors or people that just they know about it and they're using some of the free resources that we have. Like, what are some of your thoughts?
So hope I'm not still freezing on you here, Dave. Can you hear me? Is this working?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you.
Okay, good. So from and I just think that it's all about education and have different vehicles for agent empowerment. So, or mortgage broker empowerment. And so from that standpoint, those are the things like for home IQ are empowerment tools. They give you the surveys that you can give out to people for lead generation and to score people's financial literacy. They give you follow-up campaigns and social media content to position yourself as the expert. And so if you want to become that knowledge broker, it becomes having that content and a mechanism for getting that content out in front of people. So I think I always think like in the title space, what would I do if I was a title sales rep? Well, if I was in the mortgage space, what would I do if I was a mortgage broker? I would be absolutely on board with First Home IQ.
So guys, we'll put a link down below. Like you could get an example of what it's like to take the assessment, and it will be firsthomiq.com/Justin Tucker. We'll see how many of you guys go through it. It's a free quiz. It's 20 questions. Takes 3, 5, no more than 7 minutes. And if you're someone that is Gen Z and you don't own a home, you'll learn something. You will be wiser and smarter around what you need to know to achieve home ownership. And if you're a loan officer or a realtor that gave out that assessment, that link, you're delivering value and you're also building your database. So check it out.
Well, and to take that a step further too, Dave, it's like this is an opportunity for us to make the pie bigger in a world where it's hard to make the pie bigger. If we are actually investing in teaching and training the homeowner of the future so that they're in a position to buy a home down the road, we are actually just making a bigger market. We are creating more market share to be at, to be able to go out and get. So from my standpoint, I mean, you hear our CEO or founder Pat say this all the time. We don't create demand for our product. We can't. It's just there's the demand. Well, this, in my mind, is a way to educate people so that in the future they do have an opportunity to buy, and if you weren't involved, they wouldn't have had an opportunity to buy.
Yeah, and by the way, note to most mortgage and real estate professionals, you're not creating enough demand for your products. And most mortgage people, realtors are out there farming, trying to get people to sell their homes, trying to get people to buy homes. Most mortgage professionals are not creating enough demand. And that's a whole nother strategy. That's why I do this YouTube channel. I interview loan officers all the time on how to create demand, how to get more people to buy, sell, refinance so that title companies can do more title business. So let's talk AI. I know you're also a big fan of Huzi and Eric Post as well as I am. I'm seeing that really trend. What are you excited about with Huzi? What are your thoughts on just AI as a whole for mortgage and real estate?
Eric's just a smart guy, and I think he's thinking about AI in a very unique way, which is how do we take it again from that kind of magic trick or linear approach to it and turn it into more of a creative space where people can interact. I think that's a really brilliant philosophy. Him and I had a conversation a couple of months ago where I was just starting to become really cynical about AI. Like, okay, we had this massively powerful tool in front of us and we're not using it the way it was intended to be used, or maybe we just don't know how to use it yet. And I think the way that Eric thinks about AI in terms of how do you map this around from a creative standpoint, or how do you prepare, host, and follow up? How do you do those types of things? We were also talking about a product. Are you familiar with Crystal Nose?
No, sounds
Uh,
like I'm learning about a new AI tool.
Crystal Knows is it uses someone's LinkedIn profile or email address to do an entire personality assessment of them. Are they high D or I or S or C?
Oh,
What is the best way to communicate with them? And I think of things like, oh, I'm a real estate agent or a lender and I get an online lead. Well, historically, we would just have a general template that goes out. But what about a world in which you run a Crystal Knows profile on them? You're able to then analyze who they are as a human, and then AI, whether that's Chat GPT or Grok or whatever, helps you craft a one-to-one message to them and send it out. I mean, what's the difference between a 3% and a 5% conversion rate in our space? It's massive. So I have this term that I've been saying a lot, and Eric and I have been talking about a lot, which is scaling personalization. Usually you had to make a choice. We were either going to be hyper personalized, but we couldn't have the same reach, or you were going to scale and then you were going to be very general or generic. And I think right now we're at a point in time where we're going to be able to scale personalization and have very hyper personalized outreach to people at a much more efficient way and a much more efficient way of doing it.
yeah, no, Eric and I actually created a guided experience for Modern Mortgage IQ. I don't remember if we called it scaling personalization or we called it, it was something about how to, we might have called it that. But, we used Whoosy. It's where I learned this idea to research people before I met with them. Thank you, Eric, for that. And we used Whoosy as a tool to, we could like put a YouTube video, any if the person had written a book, whatever outside information you can connect it, and then you can start having a question and have a very hyper personalized conversation with folks. So I love that. By the way, we will put a link if you're watching this in YouTube, a link where if you want to learn more, get a free trial, sign up for Hoozy, where you can do that. It'll be down below. Big fan of it. But whatever AI you're using, make sure that you're not just using it to create headlines and hooks, which nothing wrong with having a writing partner, but that is like AI 101. Use it to hyper personalize at scale. And here at Trust Engine, our mortgage coach, we're actually rolling out infusing AI into everything we do. So in June to a broader market, we're rolling out an AI assistant into the total cost analysis. I think I showed that to you, didn't I?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
cool.
I demoed it where consumer could go, oh, what's the lowest cash to close? Boom.
Yep.
What if I'm only going to live in the home for 5 years? Boom. And then the loan officer knows how the consumer is engaging. A very approachable AI strategy. What are some other? Oh, by the way, when you're not talking, put a link in chat to the AI that you recommended. I want to make sure that link is down below for anyone listening to it. But what are some other AI strategies?
I think categorically you have, like as you mentioned, the creative space. What can you do with writing? You're having your writing partner or your marketing partner, and think about what you could build or create. I think that there's another phase that is research. Like how can you get more in depth and prepared for the things that you're going out and doing, especially meetings and people. But then the other two areas, which are obvious but difficult, are productivity. And I think that people look at productivity the wrong way. They're like, oh, if I can increase the productivity around things, I can get rid of people. And the actual conversation for us internally at WFG is if we can shave seconds or minutes or hours off of files, what does that free up our people to do? Now, what can they go do? How can they be connected? So I think productivity is another part of that, and then data, how you can use large sets of data for signals, how you can really start to dissect trends. So I think everyone's getting stuck in that creative space, and they should be thinking about the hyper personalization space, the productivity space, and the ability for to take large data sets and find interesting trends.
Yeah, and I also think not enough loan officers are just, it's like you're walking into a store and they're not asking the right questions, and now you can ask questions. I mean, Hoozy embedded a chat bot into Modern Mortgage IQ where you can go into that and you can just ask, hey, what are the best videos to get scripts to call realtors. Hey, what questions would Jeremy Forcier ask on a meeting? You
Yeah.
know, guys, you need to lean into this. You can learn faster. You can be more hyper personalized. Um, from a branding perspective, let's just close out our conversation because we talked about, the only two things that matter are personal brand and AI. I think you've given a few ideas that will improve personal brand, but anything else come to mind that you want to share?
I would just say, I mean, there's kind of goes back to the feeling economy. I think that at some point in time, we're going to really connect to things that we know are unique or scarce. And so while I can use AI to create a logo, I might want a Justin Tucker original logo, or even though I can have it analyze my voice, I still think I might want to hear directly from Justin. So what I think is going to start to happen with AI is the more time and energy you put into it, and not just interacting with it, but building out your own custom knowledge bases. I'm working on something for WFG where I have over 100 pages of written, like how do we overcome objections and what's the story of our company, and I took the time to write that and populate that into AI, so that's what it's pulling from. So I just think that people are too stuck in the, oh, it goes out online. It generally grabs some stuff. It comes back with some kind of generic answers. And I'm like, isn't that cool? But the more time you invest into it and the more personalized you make it through your own thoughts and content, the better your outputs are going to be and the more they're going to sound like your personal brand. So from that perspective, I think people skip that step and they get right into asking questions and not into building knowledge bases.
Yeah. And my closing thought on this, and then we're going to give you the closing thought on this whole conversation we're having, is my North Star as a personal brand that when I did this in it was 1991. I paid Hobbs Herder. For anybody who knows who's Hobbs Herder are, I dated myself and you dated yourself. Paid him a lot of money to do a photo shoot, create a color brochure. That was like a thing back then, printing out color brochures, and it needed to have a tagline. And the tagline I came up with, my advice makes a difference. And there would be no mortgage coach if I wouldn't have made that tagline. And I wouldn't have been like, how can I make that not a bunch of bullshit? Like, how can I literally say that to a consumer and then like, oh wow, options, cost over time, strategies to get out of debt. Holy shit, this guy's smart. And then I would have never started the YouTube channel if it wasn't like my advice makes a difference. Like I'm going to put on the best sales meeting in the mortgage business every single Tuesday at 9 o'clock. And so I'm not trying to advocate that anybody steals my tagline, which by the way, if you did, go for it. But but have a brand of value and you need to give value beyond Google. And now there's even a higher standard. You need to give value beyond whatever chat someone's talking to. And so AI helps you amplify your brand. I mean, like that's my why. Like if I want to continue to be a human whose advice makes a difference, one, I need to interview humans, like the conversation doing right now. Two, I need to use AI to have a better conversation, and then I need to use AI, like we use. I don't know. Have you seen Descript.com? Guys, editing videos has never been easier. It's like editing a Word doc, and like you've got to learn to use AI in approachable, thoughtful ways to amplify so that your advice makes a difference. So that's my closing thought. Anything you want to add on to that?
I do. You said something that it absolutely makes me smile because it's so spot on, which is you said, okay, how do I make that statement true? You said my advice makes a difference. And then you said, well, how do I make that statement true? And I think that that's the part that people miss, which is you can create a great tagline and a great mission statement and great core values. But if you don't live those things, if you don't find ways to make those things true, truly what you've created is a culture of hypocrisy. So it's great to have flashy marketing with great core values and taglines and mission statements, but how do you then take that into action? And that's where you're going to bridge the gap between your AI and your personal brand, or when people actually know that those are things you stand for and you live for and you execute on a regular basis. So you saying that you worked hard to make that true, that's the best piece of advice that I think you could give anyone, because they get caught up too much in the marketing, the marketing jargon, and not enough in the your brand is what someone thinks you are. and they'll think of you in that way based upon the things you do, not the things you say.
Boom. That cannot be a better closing thought. If someone wants to follow you on social or they want to learn about some of the technology you've shared, like your My Home app, I think it's called, um, where do we go? Where do they follow you? Where do they stay connected?
Just Instagram and Facebook. It's slash Just Tuck, JUSTTUCK. And I'm always open to collaborate, to share conversation, send me a direct message, comment on any of my stuff. I have really awful dad jokes, so I'm sorry ahead of time. But I love an opportunity to always meet and collaborate with new folks.
Yeah, and he's a fun person to follow. When I think of this man, I think of extreme authenticity. I think of someone that is just always throwing out provocative things with some humor connected to that. So, bro, you make the world better. You make housing better. Are you going to the gathering?
Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend this one, but it's on my list for next year.
All right. Well, I will be at the gathering. If you're watching this and you have not already, I think the hotel is sold out, but you can still get a ticket. There are still tickets and there are walkable hotels. So there'll be a link down below to sign up for the gathering. Hopefully you got value from this. If you're not already a mortgage coach or you're not one of the 150 lenders that has mortgage coach built into your tech stack, like there'll be a link to sign up. Please check out First Home IQ. Like we as an industry, mortgage and real estate can make a massive impact in financial literacy. So if you haven't gone through the quiz, hit Justin's and go to First Home IQ, sign up, donate money, join the mission. This is a wrap. Take care, everybody.